I think that, like I just said, that since last year I started to feel different as an artist in this world, because the world has changed tremendously and the perception of certain topics has completely changed, which is positive. But when I started as an artist, like which was when in my early 30s, or when I was turning 29 or something, I was really seriously getting into art, because I did a master degree at the Royal College of Art, where I was experimenting a lot with different media, and I did one piece there, which was then my final piece, which was called Operation on Fruit and Vegetables. And there I was operating on the fruit and vegetables and changing them and trying to make them better and enhance them, and changing their forms, doing skin transplantations, dressed as a doctor with a camera, projecting this image onto the wall, and people didn't know if I was operating a living being or if it was something dead or fruit. So I made people feel with this kind of inanimate but organic material. Suddenly you feel like, you feel pain because you see this fruit being cut open. And at that point I found my artistic voice, because I started to talk about the way how we humans treat nature, how we treat our bodies, how we treat our own nature, that we constantly want to change and enhance and make things better, control things. And in this work, I think it was the first time I also talked about my criticism of the way we look at the world in the Western, I would say in our Western societies. And the reason why I developed into that was that I grew up in a very scientific environment. My father is a scientist, and my sister, and also my brother-in-law, and also in my ancestors, my great-grandfather was a scientist. So I have a long history in my family of a certain way of looking at the world, which is very valuable. And also I was taught in school all these ideas about our reality, about the physical reality. But I started to feel very uneasy with that. And when I grew up, I more and more was finding some distance in myself to this kind of view. And when I started to work as an artist with this fruit operation, this was the first step towards this criticism. And then I worked for many years, I worked on myself to explore this kind of expression, but I always felt quite alone with my position. I didn't find many other artists or people who had the same kind of maybe concern. And since you asked me, I think that since like maybe 2 or 3 years, these ecological ideas and this criticism is getting much more wide into the society, and more people talk about it. Like also the young generation start to demonstrate, and Fridays for Future and all these things happen, which are really, really good and positive. But it's also due to a really serious crisis on Earth. So I think that maybe 20 years ago it was also already a topic, but it wasn't so in the common consciousness. But maybe as an artist you have a feeling of that beforehand, because you already, I think that I myself, within my family but also within our society, I always feel a little bit like an outsider as a being. And also I think that, for instance, the title of this show I did in your gallery, The Lost in Shrubland, is also reflecting this. It's kind of this feeling lost in the, lost, maybe leaving the safe space of society and going outside into the wild or into the woods. And then, but then you are lost somehow, which I want, because I want to get lost also in my art. But at the same time, it's always a feeling of, being alone, or being a little bit away from the rest. So this feeling of being so separated changes at the moment, because there are so many other people who also have the same feeling or the same perception of the world. And that my concern of the humans being really trying to control nature, feeling superior of nature, trying to exploit nature, all these kind of aspects also of our way of living, of this capitalist way of thinking about the world, is is harmful and that it needs to change, it needs to transform. And I think that in my life, it's probably my choice to talk about this as an artist. I mean, of course, I could also demonstrate or do something else, but so yes, I would like to, I want to talk about these issues as an artist, and that's my language, and that's how I think I can bring something to the world. But because my language is not the spoken language, I never feel so comfortable. I also don't feel comfortable talking about my work, but I just do it. I have to express it in a different way. So that's art. That's for me my art. That's the way I bring it out. And right now I think that art is really important to talk about these things, because it's reaching people on another level of understanding, not so much, not only the rational level, which is also important to have all these facts and figures about our life on this planet, but I think also to really touch completely different aspects of our whole being, and that's probably the task of art as well, to kind of activate this another kind of understanding, which is more maybe an instinct or another knowing that's beyond just the rational understanding. So, for instance, this piece Bardo, which we are just doing now together, is also addressing another state of consciousness. It's talking about the in-between of moments. So it's a special state of presence in which you might not be. You're not in a rational state because you're not thinking about the next step and you're not thinking about the past step. You're just really lost in this very moment. And I think this is a very fruitful moment for realizations. And that's what the piece is talking about, basically. Also, the idea of Bardo comes initially from the Tibetan Buddhism, and it's an idea of a moment between life and death. When you're dying, your soul goes into a kind of in-between place before it gets reincarnated, but at the same time it can also mean a moment in your life where you are changing from one state of your presence of your being into some other state. And there's this moment of, I think of like an insect that kind of comes out of their skin, and then they're really soft and they are not really defined, and then they go into the next. So it's quite a very precious moment, but at the same time it's a scary moment. And this is also what I want to get in this performance, that you feel like it's a little bit like hypnosis, but you also don't feel completely cozy in it. It's a little bit like anything can happen any moment. It's like a potential of the future that's in this stillness. So that's what this piece is talking about. In other works, like what I showed in the exhibition Lost in Shrubland, like the upper part of the exhibition was this book, or this kind of artist box where I show this, it's kind of like an artist edition. It's called Field Notes from the Wild, and that happened together with the curator Laura Sánchez Serrano, who wrote the text to this book. And the main idea of it was to investigate into my idea of nature, of the wilderness, of the wild, and I did a lot of different works for this theme. So this box shows the first chapter of all my work for this theme, which was about one year, where I was sleeping outside in the woods, for instance, trying to understand how it feels when you are out in the wilderness, what it does to my mind and to my body. Or I did a special performance in Paris where I walked around with it's called Transmission Wood, where I walked around with long antennas that are made out of branches from trees. And these branches, they try to get in touch with the trees in the city at night. So I'm trying to how did I say it? I try to reactivate the tree sense. So it's kind of the sense for the nature, to try to understand how trees are communicating, how trees are talking. So it's in a way a step towards another way of perceiving nature or feeling nature, not with your mind, but with your whole body. Because I think that this is something that we as humans, we actually are able to connect to all the nature around, but we have forgotten how to do it, to feel really not superior, but to see the trees or any other kind of being as just on the same, we are all the same level, and we can connect with this other kind of beings on earth. So what I'm planning now at the moment is to do another piece in Alicante, where it's called Transmission Waves, where I will try to do the same with the water element, to kind of like feel the water, to get a kind of like find a language with the water. So this will be also another video that can be shown later, and hopefully people who watch it can feel that or understand what I want to say with these pieces.
Hablando un poco de las piezas de la galería, las de abajo. Habla un poquito de las piezas de abajo.
I want to talk about some work we was in the basement.
La exposición que en estos momentos tenemos en la galería.
Like if we were the exhibition was nowadays in the gallery.
Que diga algo así como se presente. En estos momentos la Galería Aural presentamos la parte de abajo las piezas que describa alguna nota que considere más
introducing people to the exhibition, like nowadays in the other floor at Aural, I have this piece which is important. We just talk about two pieces.
Okay.
pieces.
We introduce it.
Además tiene que decir el título explicando esto.
Sí, lo he dicho.
Two pieces. Okay, let's see.
No, two pieces.
Ha hablado de arriba del vídeo, ha hablado del libro.
Sí, ha hablado de, muy bien, que describa la parte de abajo. Describe the basement.
What's there? So when you, I think that what one piece I would like to talk about, because it's also connecting very well to this other topics with nature, is a little bit older piece with the Maus ist Maus, where I had a really, like, I wanted to include natural processes into my artwork, and that also demonstrates the way I work. I already said before, but I say it again. that I like to work really as part of a process. I don't really want to know already what's happening in the end of this process or of a piece of art I'm involved with. So in this work, I realized that outside of my studios there are rats or maybe mice living, and I thought it would be really nice to include them into some kind of artistic fabrication. And I made a big mouse. I went to the cheese shop and I bought this huge big piece of cheese, of Emmentaler cheese, and I was carving a mouse out of it. I put it outside of my studio, and I got an infrared camera that's normally for hunters or for other people who want to look at animals at night, and I installed that camera just directly at this mouse, and whenever at night there was an animal approaching the cheese, the camera started to film because it was feeling the movements of the animal. So over maybe 1 month, the camera was taking many small films of the mice eating the cheese mouse, being really busy, eating. And at some point it was completely full with it was just like a very strange shape. And just before it started to get very ugly, and I couldn't use it anymore, I took it away and went to the shop to cast a bronze, like a really expensive bronze out of that. So in the end, I have now this art piece, this mouse-made sculpture, and I had a film of the mice working. So this was my final piece, but the only thing I really did was taking the cheese out in the right moment, and so the main work were the mice. They did the work for me, and I didn't pay them at all. Well, I did with the cheese, but but that was the one work. And then another piece I would like to mention is a quite radical performance piece, one of the more extreme pieces I did. It was called Grüne Erde, Green Earth, and I did it as part of a performance competition in Italy. And the idea had been that I would bury myself completely in soil. So I was in a flower pot, I was buried in this flower pot, and there were lots of plants planted, and only one of my breasts was looking out between the plants like a mushroom or like some strange fruit or whatever. And people who came to this entrance, it was in the entrance of a theater, I was in this flower pot, people came and they looked at the flowers, and then they saw this strange mushroom breast, whatever, and they thought it's not real, they thought it's just maybe silicone or something, but then when you look closer, you could see me breathing, like the plants were moving, and then people wanted to touch it, but of course I had somebody there to stop that, because that's another performance I don't want to do. That has been done before. So the point was also this ambiguity in this work is that on the one hand side it has some very humorous aspect, of course, but on the other side it has some also very daunting aspect, because I've been buried alive, and it's also something to do with femininity, with this kind of passiveness of femininity, and there's lots of issues in this work. I don't want to explain more, but it's just, I just want to hint, and there's one photograph of this work in the gallery from the process, or it wasn't from the performance, but another studio photograph from this work was in the show. And maybe then the third work I'd like to talk about is a recent work. It's from this year, and there were two hotels for insects. So because in Germany it's very fashionable, every garden center is selling insect hotels, and this is also a sign of this new kind of sense for ecology, but at the same time it's in a, well, I had the feeling I have to make fun of it, because it's not so serious, you know, people just buy, for €5, they buy the insect hotel, they put it somewhere, and then, you know, they have done their share for nature, and that's it. So I just wanted to push it a little bit further and make insect hotels like the deluxe design insect hotels that are made out of clay, and they have lots of different places where they can live, and they have a little pool and they can land, and so, but these works also work as sculptures, so they have this double meaning. You can put them in the garden for the insects, and probably the insects would love it, but you can also have them inside. So there's works are critical, but at the same time humorous comment. Yes, the video, I forgot completely, true. There was something I didn't remember anymore, strange. Yeah, and then there's another work I did, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, that more reflects not so necessarily on this nature relationship, but more on a kind of state of being, which I feel it's very strong at the moment, because everybody, me and all my friends, and I can see everybody really being overwhelmed with so much information, because we all now have the smartphones and we are on the internet, and it's just so much that we take in. And when I was young, when I was a child and even a young adult, we didn't have the phone, so I'm this generation that's just on between the computer and I'm not a digital native, I'm a non-digital native, and then I grew into this digital age, but I can see what it does to my mind, and it's this feeling of constant input, and you can't even process all of this kind of input of news and pictures and images. So I created this, it's like a short video where you can see just the top of me, like the torso, and I have a construction on my head, which is like it's like a construction with a lot of small bowls, and they get filled by rain. So the rain is raining onto me constantly, very strong, and all these bowls get filled, but then the rain doesn't stop, so the bowls flow over, and all the water goes over my face. And when I did it, I constructed it not with real rain, but with a hose and whatever, it doesn't matter. But the sensation of this constant water flow was very, very uncomfortable. It was not like standing under a shower, because it was cold. And this constant dripping onto my head, it was really like almost painful. And I understood that this is really a method for torture for people. and that you can see in the video also how I don't feel very well, and this was good for my work because it transports really this pain of constant information, constant getting too much into your head, and this is a state that's not very comfortable. And I think that this work reflects this kind of state of being of our time in a good way. Yes.
Solamente saber si ella ha hablado sobre lo que se mueve en las disciplinas de alguna manera, que yo le da igual la disciplina que toca comunicar, y cómo la performance me influye como una obra en sí o como una obra efímera o digo una, a ver si me explico. He trabajado con una diversidad de medios inmensa, ¿no? Es decir, que me da igual.
You're working with different mediums, sculpture, draw, you do performances, but the performance, do you take the performance as an art piece, as something that you can keep, or something ephemeral?
O como imagen fotográfica que registra una acción, o la posee como una obra en sí misma, o de alguna manera es algo dinámico o algo que se transforma en función también de...
You've been talking that one performance is the one you were involving. You take one picture and that's what you were showing. So it's kind of like you are playing more dynamically with the performances.
Yes, I think that of course I mean this is a long probably process for all performance artists, always this question of how do you document it, is the document the real thing or not, but I'm not getting too much involved into this because I'm very pragmatic, to be honest. I just think, okay, the performance of course is the main statement, but then I can't do it again all the time, so I need to find another way to translate it maybe into a photograph. And the photograph is not the performance, it's something different, but still you have like maybe some essential information in the photograph, and that's what I want. I mean, I want the idea to go on, and I want to communicate the idea, so I'm choosing just different medias to prolong that, or I if possible to make a video to show it. But for instance, I have a video from this performance with the breast, but it's not really, it's something you have to experience. With Bardo, it's more possible to do a film from that because it's more visual, it works as an image. But with the breast work, it's something very physical. You have to be there as a body to experience it. But it depends on the works. But for instance, this piece with the rain, I think it works perfectly as a video installation. You don't have to see the performance at all. Or transmission wood, I think, is also functions, or transmission wave, if it works like I want to, it's gonna be fine just as a still film. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to see it in real life. Yeah.
You can sum up.
Okay.
Que finalice como quiera.
Igual si está bien. Si quiere terminar de alguna manera.
Want to say something?
Yeah, so maybe I forgot something about, but I think it's difficult to, because some things I said in the first take, but I forgot it now. If I said them in the second one, probably not, but I don't know. I think it's probably enough to cut something.
Sí, sí.
Yeah. Thank you.